welcome to I-24 News Defense, your weekly look into security, intelligence, and strategic affairs. In this edition, inside an IDF patrol on the Gaza border, as the warning bells for the next war get louder. And with all eyes on Iraq and Syria, a look at the country IS is gradually turning into the next stronghold, Libya. In Israel, it's a highly familiar story that's been catapulted back into the conversation. The readiness of Hamas for the next war in Gaza, and Israeli border residents reporting their floors shaken from the digging of tunnels beneath them. Mohammed El-Qasem joined an IDF unit patrolling the volatile border.
Amid growing tensions between Israel and Hamas, the Israeli army has deployed an artillery battery along the Gaza border. It follows a recent incident in which an alleged Hamas cell planted roadside bombs close to the security fence in the north of the Strip. In the past, such moves by the IDF have come ahead of escalating hostilities. Leader of the centrist Israeli Yesh Atid party, Yair Lapid, spoke up, warning of the deteriorating situation and saying it could lead to a new military confrontation.
The upcoming confrontation with Gaza is a matter of time, not more.
He pointed out that Hamas and Hezbollah are preparing for a battle.
At the time we are sitting here, there are 1,000 people digging tunnels in Gaza. Some of them cross the underground border towards Israel.
But the Israeli army disregarded this assertion given the relative calm along the border and given that Israel has no intention of picking a fight with Hamas.
1 week can be more tense, the next calmer. Occasionally, as happened a few days ago, we detect rocket fire from within the Gaza Strip towards Israel. We, the army, do not remain idle. We respond precisely where we should against Hamas.
But Shatrit stressed that Hamas still poses a threat to Israel as it continues to build a new network of tunnels.
From the point of view of Hamas, they are conducting operations, building positions on the fence. It has built a military line along the border. It conducts operations of the kind not carried out by a peaceful organization.
And indeed, the Al-Qassam Brigade, Hamas's military wing, confirmed that 7 of its members were killed when a tunnel collapsed on them because of heavy rain. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the deputy head of Hamas's political arm, Ismail Haniyeh, promised a surprise in the event that war does erupt.
We carry on with the uprising and keep building our strength in a way that will surprise the world. We don't do this to defend Gaza. We do it to liberate Jerusalem and the whole of Palestine.
In recent weeks, Hamas has fired rockets into the sea, testing their range, and Israeli intelligence says the group has improved its military capabilities. Despite the buildup, privately, neither side appears interested in confrontation. For now, the nemeses seem intent to maintain the status quo.
And with me now in the studio is retired Colonel Atay Shelach, former commander of an IDF elite combat engineering unit. Thank you for joining us. When we hear that Hamas is digging towards Israel, is this an indication that they are preparing for a distant future conflict or an imminent conflict?
You know, at the moment that the last campaign in Gaza were ended 1.5 years ago, it won't be any wild guess to assume that in the next future there will be another campaign in Gaza. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It will be. It's not a question when, just a question if in which condition it will take us.
Well, the tunnels clearly touches the deepest fears of the residents around Gaza, but how much of a threat do they pose to Israel?
I think the one important thing that we should emphasize that we don't have to prepare ourselves to the last campaign, and we should look further, and which means that the Hamas will take the tunnel or the underground medium another step, which means that it will be much operational. They will use it in much stronger way, and I think that the mistake here is to assume that the tunnels or the underground medium that we comfort in the last campaign will be the same. It won't be the same. It will be much harder.
Well, Israel has been dealing with the threat of tunnels for more than a decade, and it seemed that in the last war, IDF troops were not really prepared to conduct that kind of fighting underground.
Yeah, but what happened after the last campaign, that the Ministry of Defense and all the authorities decided to put the first shekel on it. You know, it's become in the highest priority before the last campaign. Don't ask me why, but if I'm looking for the future and I try to learn what happened since the last campaign, it's that all the authorities that related to this issue are doing a big effort, a huge effort, to not be in the start or the point of start that we have in the last campaign.
It was published that Israel has deployed the first unique system to detect tunnels around Gaza, and it's planning to deploy more in the coming year. When do you think Israel will have the ability to detect tunnels?
So this is just one part. The final solution, if I may say, it's a combination of a lot of technologies, and it's also a combination between the intelligence and the operational move. And I think that beside the technology, that it's a big role over here, we also had advance in the matter of intelligence and operational way, and you can't depart it. It's a triangle that you should look on it.
But right now we're already told that Hamas has dug several tunnels into Israeli territory. Why wouldn't the IDF go and take care of them?
Because there is two answers for that. First of all, it's a political question. You know, the political will have to decide. Okay, this is first. Second, we have to prepare ourselves. So in the moment that we're going to decide to deal with it, we should be prepared as much better as we can. And maybe, I'm saying maybe, in these days, the Ministry of Defense and the IDF are not prepared to do the first move. I just put some guess here. It's not decision makers, but you know, it's a political issue and it's an operational issue. And from the operational side, maybe the Ministry of Defense and the IDF want to be prepared as much as they can before they're going to act.
So now, when the technology is not yet mature, what does it take to go and destroy such a tunnel?
You know, every day that passed from now or since year and a half ago, we prove our abilities. And every day that we will go further, we'll be much prepared in all the aspects. And there are many aspects, not just to detect, not just to ruin. There are also how to take a warfare underground, etc., etc., etc. It's an issue that we have to build ourselves, and we are not just in the beginning, but we have to move. We have some gaps to close here.
But going today to destroy existing tunnels, does that mean another round of war, such as the war that we experienced last summer?
I think it will be much intensive than the last summer.
Many Israelis are asking themselves, if Hamas is digging tunnels from Gaza into Israel, does Hezbollah is doing the same thing in the north?
It won't be a wild guess.
You assume that there are tunnels?
It won't be a wild guess to assume that also at the Lebanese border they are digging. It won't be a wild guess.
Colonel Atai Shelach, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
For some time now, headlines have focused squarely on the Islamic State terror group and on two former countries, in particular Iraq and Syria. But while eyes are safely turned to there, another disintegrated country is on its way to become the terror group's next stronghold, with little intervention standing in its way. Dov Lieber brings us the story of Libya.
Since the NATO-backed revolution ousted and killed longtime Libyan dictator Muammar al-Gaddafi, citizens of the coastal North African country have had little reason to celebrate. The country has been plagued by political strife and infighting among rival militias. And within the chaos, the Islamic State has filled the void. While the extremist group is quickly losing ground in Syria and Iraq thanks to Russian and US military interventions, IS has been busy building a new stronghold in Libya. Today, the terror group is fully in control of the coastal town of Sirte. This new stronghold is strategically placed between Libya's two largest cities, Tripoli and Benghazi. It is also located near Libya's major oil terminals, and that's no accident. Since the beginning of January, IS has launched a number of attacks on Libya's large oil terminals. The extremist group hopes to repeat its economic model of success in Iraq and Syria by robbing Libya of its oil and selling it on the black market. Experts believe the militant group already has 3,000 men in the North African country, and with Turkey finally tightening its border with Syria, potential fighters are now more likely to join the jihadist group in Libya. To try and stem the growth of IS, Western governments have attempted to unify Libya's political representatives.
The best response to terrorism, and especially to Daesh, would be, we agreed that, a Libyan response determined by the Libyan unity that can be supported in the ways in which the Libyan will determine by international community.
Since the summer of 2014, Libya has had two rival governments and parliaments, one militia-backed government in Tripoli and the internationally recognized government operating in the eastern city of Tobruk. But last week, unity efforts were dealt a major blow when the parliament, recognized by the international community, rejected a unity government proposal brokered by the UN. And with local politicians in a stalemate, the Pentagon is now drawing up plans to open up a third front against IS in Libya. But with little hope of a political solution on the horizon, some fear an expanded military effort won't be enough to drag Libya out of the chaos.
From Cairo joins us I-24 News contributor Jacob Watzschafter. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Alon.
You cover Libya quite extensively. Can we still call it Libya? Is there such a country anymore?
It's a really good question given the fact that it's the world's fastest shrinking economy. They've lost $60 billion since 2011 in oil revenue. And people are talking about the fact that there are two parliaments. There's one in the west in Tripoli, and there's an internationally backed one in Tobruk. That said, there's a lot of pressure on these factions to get it together because of the ISIS threat.
Who is fighting who? What are the fighting factions?
So out of Tobruk, we've got the Libyan National Army with General Khalifa Haftar. And he's the guy that's backed by the Egyptians and by most of the international community. In the west of Libya, you've got a whole slew of different militias going on there. You've got the Libyan Shield in the internal desert parts of Libya. You've got Libya Dawn in the coastal cities. And then you've got a special protection force for Libya's petroleum industry called the Petroleum Industry Force. On top of that, you've got jihadi groups in the east. And in the west, you've got groups that are supporting Haftar. So it is one heck of a toxic brew.
Well, unlike most of the disintegrating countries around us, Libya is predominantly Sunni. So is Daesh basically taking over clan feuds?
There's a lot of reason to support that as an explanation, given that Libya is a tribal society. But look, Daesh is not a clan-based organization. It's an ideological religious organization. It's attracted foreign fighters, as your package intro to this interview pointed out. And so I don't think those foreign fighters are there to fight Libya's clan wars. I think they're there because they have a view of the caliphate. And that its proximity to Italy is very attractive for folks that are looking to threaten the West and extend the caliphate globally.
So do we see the structure that we know from Syria of the Islamic State providing civilian services, social services to the people in this area?
I think you've just nailed where ISIS in Libya is very, very weak. Nobody seems to be doing very much for the people of Libya itself. And that may be where the international coalition can be of most assistance in helping the Tobruk government come up with an alternative to bring this to something that looks like a happier ending for the people of Libya.
And aside from an international coalition, right now, which external forces are taking part in this conflict?
Well, you know, I'm in Cairo, and so the Egyptians are very anxious to secure their border, and they're looking at who their allies are in this, and of course, the primary one is the Americans. On top of that, there may be some Russian involvement. There's a long-term cooperation with the Libyans and the former Soviets, as you know. And then in the West, we're looking, believe it or not, at Italian and German forces congregating on the western border of Libya to bring stability into that country.
What's the impact of the fall in oil prices on the former country?
Look, I mean, bad oil prices have been bad for almost every single petroleum state in the world. On the other hand, that means that we're looking at something that's about providing services to people. And there's going to need to be international aid to Libya to provide that food aid. We saw some of that come in this weekend, medicines as well. And in terms of the people on the ground in Libya, they're not going to see anything from the oil revenue for years until their state is put back together.
Jacob Watzschafter in Cairo, thank you very much for talking to us. And that's all we have time for. Be sure to visit us again next week for another edition of I-24 News Defense. For tonight, we'll leave you with an incredible air show from the civilian jet team, the Baltic Bees. Have a safe night from the Jaffa Port.